Welcome back to Opening Statements. This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the oldest daughter of former mommy vlogger Ruby Franke, who's revealing what it was like to grow up with her abusive mother. Now, before being convicted of abusing two of her children, Ruby Franke had a popular YouTube show called 8 Passengers, which was featuring her no-nonsense style of parenting. But then Franke's youngest son escaped the home of Ruby Franke's business partner, Jody Hildebrand, and showed up at a neighbor's house emaciated and bruised. He had duct tape on his ankles. And in her new memoir, Sherry Franke describes the emotional and physical abuse that she says she and her 5 siblings all endured. Here she is speaking to ABC News.
When I was younger, around like 5, 6, like Ruby was really physical. Like, you know, whether it was like a slap to the lip or a slap to the cheek. When I would practice the piano, you know, like her hand would slam and like, it was really scary. And honestly, when she met Jody, that kind of stopped.
Do you notice how she calls her mother Frankie? Now Sherry, or calls her mother Ruby, excuse me, calls her Ruby, calls her by her first name. Now Sherry Franke also wrote that her mother asked, quote, if we made the news just one day after she was arrested for abusing her 2 youngest kids. So that was apparently her big concern, not, oh, the kids are okay. Did it get publicity? Let's talk about it with our power panel. Still with me, our legal eagles, Don Malarsic and Casey Early, and welcoming in now on the panel, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, a psychology expert who specializes in family and relationship matters. She's also a published author as well. Dr. Sue, first of all, what do you think of this child, Sherry Franke, calling her mother by her first name? When she does this interview, she calls her Ruby, says Ruby was really physical with us. What does that tell you?
Well, first of all, Julie, let me just say your opening statement was on fire, so I appreciate that. And second of all, what she's doing there is separating herself from her mother. And because of all of the abuse that had taken place, she has now separated herself from her and doesn't want much to do with her. I think a more powerful statement that she had said in that interview, which I did watch, was that, has your mother apologized to you? And she said, yes, she has apologized. And she believes her own apology, but I do not believe her apology. And that is a very bold statement by a very brave young woman to go on and say that, because Ruby Franke, I believe, lives in a delusional world about who she is and what she is. And she is mostly about herself, attention, and she may be sorry, but it's not authentic. So her daughter is removing herself from her and not identifying her as her mother anymore due to all of this abuse to protect herself.
Yeah, I can't blame her. This is really helpful insight, Dr. Sue. Thank you. I have another clip from Sherry Franke's interview with ABC. Here she's talking about that relationship that her mother had with Jody Hildebrand, the other child abuser, just as bad as Ruby Franke. Horrible, these two ladies in this business they concocted. Big fraud it was. What was going on behind closed doors was horrific. Let's listen to what Sherry Franke thinks about this relationship.
I certainly got weird vibes from Jody and Ruby. I don't think it's normal at all that a therapist would move into her client's home. I was moving out to college and I hadn't even left the house yet, and she is in my room and in my bed.
What was that relationship between the two of them?
Ruby tried to be secretive about it, and so I don't know all the details, but just the vibes that I was getting was that something was strange between them.
Oh my, yeah. So there was a lot going on between those two. A lot of, seems conspiring to commit crimes. Casey Early, you are a fierce protector of children, have handled a lot of child abuse cases. What do you think about poor Sherry Franke now coming out and saying that she also was abused through her childhood by these two, or by her mother?
Yeah, my motherly instincts just went off. I mean, I'm always leery about parents, first and foremost, who push their kids, whether it's social media, YouTube, and project this perfect relationship, because we know, even as a mother of four, that there is no perfect relationship. So there's something going on in the background. And then when you couple that with it being monetized and the parents are making money, of course they want to continue this. And children want to be children. So when you force them to do this, you have to have a heavy hand. You have to have a stern hand. And looking at the abuse, we can tell what was going on in the background. So it was just an uncomfortable situation, unfortunate situation. And I'm thankful that not only are the children out of it, but this is the healing process. Just like the psychologist said, this separation from their abuser, mother or not, she was supposed to protect, and she failed miserably at that job. So I'm glad that they're not only separated, but moving from this abuse in the future.
Right, Casey, thank you for that. I have another clip. This is where one of Ruby Franke's children who suffered torture in the home is nervous to talk to the EMTs, scared to death when they go in the home to try to rescue her. Let's watch.
You don't want to talk? Okay. There's nothing at all you want to talk about at all? It's okay to talk to me. Are you scared? Just nervous. What? Just nervous.
A child was petrified. Don Malarczyk, I know this breaks your heart. You've seen it all throughout your career. Your thoughts on this mother, Ruby Franke, painting herself to the world as this great parent, but then behind closed doors, her children were suffering so badly. What does that say to you?
You know, every child abuse case is horrific. It's difficult. It's unimaginable. But, you know, there are sometimes not excuses, but you can look at what was going on in this family's life to explain how a child may have been malnourished. Maybe there wasn't enough money. They didn't have the funds to have food. Maybe the parents were drug addicted and needed some help. Perhaps there were some untreated and undiagnosed mental health issues that caused the children to be neglected or abused. Those aren't excuses, but those are cases where you can kind of get your head around what happened here and give some explanation. But this is really the worst of the worst. This was an able-bodied, intelligent, articulate, wealthy woman who monetized the abuse of her children. It's just unthinkable. It's unimaginable. And that fear and that nervousness that you saw in that young child's voice and in her eyes when she's talking to first responders tells it all. She lived in fear. She lived in terror. And that's just really the worst form of the abuse, to have a mom that is monetizing that and making money off of it. It's really appalling, and there's just really no mitigation that I can even think of or imagine to explain how her children got here.
Don, thank you. Such excellent insight from you all. We've got to leave it there for time. Big thank you to Dr. Sue Kornbluth and attorneys Don Malarczyk and Casey Early. We'll see you all very soon.